I really started pushing this idea of advocating for fair market value quality of life. Okay, you can't pay me more money, that's fine. But I don't understand why you're considering my Q2 call to be fair market value. The way to fix that is...
Dr. Mark Royer, MD, is a head and neck surgery otolaryngologist in Evansville, IN, and has over 15 years of experience in the medical field.
His practice specializes in chronic sinus disease treatment, performing an office balloon sinus dilation since 2012, and surgical management of thyroid disease.
So how did you get started with all this? So you have your idea, you have your MBA, you're like, I have done a SWOT analysis.
There's a lot of pitfalls, there's a lot of issues, there's a lot of stress with it. But for better or for worse, I value my friends too much to try to go into business with them a lot of the time. I've always tried to approach our business endeavors with not trying to grow too big too fast. The thing that was always missed, though, in those discussions from an admin standpoint is...
Welcome to the Interesting MD podcast, the show about what doctors do when we aren't seeing patients and how this can help us find balance and prevent burnout. I'm your host, Rob Beck. Welcome back to another episode of the Interesting MD podcast. I'm your host, Rob Beck. I have with me this week Dr. Mark Royer, and he is an ENT surgeon who, along with his wife, Allison, has started a couple of businesses. The first is a locum staffing company called Specialty Locums, and the second is a podcast, Let's Locums. And he has been kind enough to come on today. We were connected by Dr. Gopi Shah after I heard her episode on his podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, he sounds amazing, Gopi. Can you please connect me with him? And she was kind enough to do so. We actually do have a lot of similarities. He and his wife have the exact same job and work together, as do Andrea and I. And also, we are both adult onset wakeboarders. And so I'm really looking forward to this. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Robert. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, adult onset wakeboarders. That describes us well, I think, and I have a problem. I don't know if you're as addicted to it as I am, but
I haven't done it since we moved to Canada, but I used to love it and I was never any good at it. So board sports, I am not great at board sports. I've got to be honest.
I drink a lot of water for sure.
I have some pretty good wipeout videos, but other than that, nothing amazing. Andrea tells me that I can't turn on my toe edge, whatever that means. So, I know what the toe edge is, but yeah, I don't know. I look at people doing that and I'm like, how do you do that? Yeah,
our boat is it doesn't put out a very big wake. So, I don't get quite the air. I think that's what I blame it on is, why I can't ever get those wake to wake jumps. I better boat, Allie. I'd be good to go.
Well, obviously that's next year's goal, right? You just got to get a better boat. Just got to get a better boat. Anyway, thanks so much. Sorry for all the silliness there. But all right. So where are you from? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I grew up in a couple different places. Most of my childhood was in Eugene, Oregon, so Pacific Northwest. But then my family moved to Indiana, where everybody in the Royer clan is from in the Midwest. And that's where I went to medical school and residency and have more or less been practicing since I got done with residency in 2012.
Okay. So where in Indiana are you guys?
Yeah. So right now we live in southern Indiana, the very southernmost tip of the state, next to Kentucky and Illinois. And that's where my wife's family's all from. We moved here about 8 years ago as we were looking we were starting a practice, having our kind of youngest daughter, and we needed some help with the kids. And so my father-in-law just sold his engineering business, and my mother-in-law, both of them were really excited to help us with our kids and school pickups and babysitting. And it's been great. I never realized I didn't really have much family support growing up. So it's been a lot of fun to see our kids develop such a tight bond with their grandparents and their cousin, kind of stay stable in a place that they really like, having all the family support. So that's where we've been here for about 8 years.
That's really amazing to have the family support. We when we first started having kids, when we were in med school, we were 8 hours away from the closest person to help. And from my parents and Andrea's parents were in Toronto. So
yeah, with the 2-physician household, we did the nanny thing. Right when I got done with residency, Allie was a couple years behind me. We're both ear, nose, and throat surgeons. We practiced together right outside of Indianapolis, and it was busy. It was on call all the time, and we really relied on a nanny who was with us for pretty much that entire time we were there. And then her parents would come up, but it's just so nice to have full-time family support for sure.
So now you guys started your own private practice in...
Yeah. So we started out, initially it was very common to do employment at the time we came out, the early aughts, I guess, early to mid aughts, right? Everybody was taking employed jobs. We were both general ENTs. We decided not to do fellowships. And so we took a job starting a service line for a hospital in an employed role. And it was great. It was a lot of fun. I mean, you can imagine we love working together. We got to operate together. We saw patients, started the practice together, but while having a steady salary coming in. And I had a 3-year contract there. And we were talking before we started recording about an MBA. And pretty much after I'd been there a year, I was getting a little frustrated because we were, a lot of ENTs have their surgery centers that they can operate at, very quick changeover. We have a lot of these really quick cases that should only take 5 minutes to change over between an ear tube. We were hospital employed and we were only operating at the hospital. And so the changeover for these cases, for me, kind of right out of residency, ready to go, it was a little too long. And I would kind of go into the room and try and help open quotes out of the thing. And It never seemed to work. And Allie, who was much more level-headed and the chill one among the two of us, was like, what, you just need to, don't worry about it. Just chill. I just couldn't chill. So what she kind of recommended was that maybe I start doing some courses, something that interests me, reading or courses while I'm waiting for these cases to change over. And so I found this brand new MBA program that was 100% online, but yet still accredited based on a MBA program that actually the college is in Evansville. And they were just getting it up and going. I had kind of looked at some other physician MBA programs, which were like $100,000 and required some time away from your practice. And those certainly would have their benefits of networking, et cetera. But I just didn't have the ability we were on call all the time. So I couldn't leave. So online, and it was cheap. It was like $12,000 or something. So I started doing that. I did almost the entire coursework over 2.5 years between cases. So I was just like, do the case, dictate, talk to the family, do a module, and then, they're okay. Now they're ready for my next case. And so that's kind of how I made use of that time. And it was good. I was really glad that we did that because I had no business background at all. Like, when I got out of residency, I knew nothing about medical billing. I knew nothing about balance sheets. I knew nothing about, I didn't even know the difference. I remember I don't know if you read The White Coat Investor at all, but yeah, so his stuff was super valuable for me. I got his book and I was starting to read it, and he's talking about index funds and mutual funds and ETFs. And I didn't know the difference between any of those things. And so I remember I emailed him one night as I was reading this, and he got right back to me. I'm sure he's way too busy to do that now, but he was really helpful. And so I didn't know, I had no medical or I had no business background. And so the MBA was really a useful way to kind of get some of that in a structured format, kind of augmented what I had learned specifically from The White Coat Investor and some of those other kind of basic books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I found it very useful. I definitely don't think it's necessary to have an MBA as an MD. I mean, I think you can really self-teach, but for where I was at, the fact that it didn't really cost me any, significant amount of money, I wasn't taking time away from my family. I was just taking, frustration away by not kind of waiting around twiddling my thumbs. So it worked out really well. And it does change it's a different kind of muscle in your brain that you're exercising. And so if you're not naturally inclined to that, I think for me, it was really useful. For some people it is. It certainly doesn't seem like it helps if you want to just go into hospital admin, right? Like it's really more, I think it's probably kept me out of trouble more than anything else, because everybody is always pitching ideas and wanting you to invest or think that this is a good business idea. You can really kind of quickly analyze. I think that's the most important, a SWOT analysis, right? Something that I'd never heard of before my MBA program, like to actually think about, okay, well, why, if this is such a good idea, why hasn't it been done before? What are the competitive advantages? What are the pitfalls? What's our competition? So just kind of that way of thinking, almost without thinking about it, I think I found to be very useful in what we decided to do next.
Okay, so now I have to eat my words. As I told you, I always say MDs do not need MBAs, but again, maybe in the healthcare administration, I will still stand by that. You said that too, so it's gospel now.
Yeah, if that's what you want to do, it's not going to get you that job, right? It's not going to get you. CMO positions are becoming very competitive as people are getting more burned out with clinical practice for good reason. that it is mandatory, I think, to have one, but not just that alone is not going to be able to kind of land you a job out of the blue. Yeah, no, but I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think we're so well trained and selected to be able to get into medical school that as long as you're willing to take the time to self-educate, you can, I think the sky's the limit without any credential. And you can see, like, even on I actually don't even put it on my, much of my correspondence anymore, because I do always kind of fear that people are like, oh, he's just just in it for the money. He's got that MBA. So, depending on the audience, oftentimes I'll leave it off the email signature. Depends.
You guys moved down there. When did you decide to open up Specialty Locums? How did that come about?
When we were employed and I was working on my MBA, it was just the two of us at that hospital. And we came down with the understanding, and this is I find out later, this is a common thing that happens to docs when hospitals start new service lines. There was like 3 other ENTs in town, but they were bringing us in almost, the hospital was as an act of war against these other groups for various reasons, opening surgery centers, it's just silly stuff. And so I remember very vividly, they're like, oh yeah, you guys will be Q5. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. It's coming off of busy academic call. And so that sounds great, Q5. And so I remember I called the senior guy in the town. I was like, hey, great news. We're coming in. You guys, we're going to help out with call, and we're looking forward to working with you. Maybe we can co-scrub some bigger cases. And the guy was a total asshole. He was like, we're not working with you. Like, the hospital brought you in to screw us over. Like, we're all dropping our hospital privileges. And I was like, wait, what? Oh. Yeah, it was very shocking. Subsequently, he offered me a job pretty soon after that, but deal was already done with the hospital. So, and I'm good friends with all of those 3 docs now, but at the time it was really overwhelming, because you're just like, okay, what have we done here? So it was just going to be the 2 of us on call. Fortunately, I did have a provision that required some assistance with call coverage, right? I didn't want to just take, even then, at least I was, didn't want to take someone's word that, people can leave from the community and stuff like that. So I did have a provision that we would be have call limits, even though we were still on call for our patients most of the time. And whenever we were in town covering the ER, whenever we would travel, or more importantly, when we had started having when we had our 10-year-old girl who's now 10, to be able to get time off for even Allie to have the baby and me to be there when we're delivering, right? We had to have some coverage. Nobody in the community would help, or in the region. So that's when I first learned about Locum Tenens. And so we would bring in, we used a couple different agencies, or the hospital did, brought in docs. Some were in the military, some were doing starting a facial plastics program in a competitive area. So they were really slow. So they would fly out and just cover our call, basically take care of our patients when we were traveling, or, otherwise not available. Got to know those docs really well, became good friends with many of them, and then could also kind of see the back end of what they were getting. Once they're your friends, they tell you what they're getting paid, and you see what the hospitals getting charged. And that's what I'm like, this doesn't make sense. There's a way to add value to this, that this can be done better, because that's the whole, I guess that's to kind of distill it down. Purpose of an MBA is to figure out where to find value in business interactions, right? And transactions. So I figured we could charge the hospitals less, pay the docs more. And so I use it as kind of like a senior capstone project to figure out what are the barriers, where are these expenses coming in, how can we pay docs more, and where would this be needed? And so then we kind of essentially went from there. And so I had this idea kicking around. I got some feedback and worked on it. And around the time that I realized we're going to be moving to Evansville, I also thought it would be pretty easy to start a medical practice. It's much easier to start a medical practice than it is to start a locums company. I started my entire medical practice, family ENT, in a coffee shop. So I was just like, okay, well, what am I going to need? I didn't have any mentors or anything. I was like, well, what the hell am I? Well, I think I need an LLC. Okay. How do I do that? And then what do I need now? Oh, I need an MPI. Oh, to get that for the organization, I have to have an EIN. Well, how do I get an EIN? I mean, just a lot of Googling, right? And then, okay, now I got my EIN, my LLC, my practice MPI. What do I need now? Well, how do I get a patient to charge their insurance when they see me, right? So I guess I need an insurance contract. How do you get that? So would go to the websites of Anthem and Blue Cross or Cigna or whatever, and just apply from there. So that was all kind of started in a coffee shop with the idea that if we keep our overhead low and we do kind of a concierge model, that we could really, you didn't have to see like a ton of patients. Like, the average ENT seeing like 40, 50 patients a day, requiring a huge amount of staff. Figured, is there a way that we can do this differently? Leverage technology, leverage online scheduling, leverage different kind of billing options, EMR options, not fall into these pitfalls of feeling like you have to work 80 hours a week with most of your time, at least 60% of your time, generating revenue to pay your overhead of your staff. So we're kind of doing both of the things at the same time. And both businesses are still going strong. We've really leaned a lot more into the locums company as that's grown. We started it as ENT specific because there's a lot of players in this space. There's massive agencies. So to give you an example, I'm sure people are getting texts and emails from Comp Health and Weatherby and Global Medical Staffing all the time. Those are all the same company. They're owned by a company called CHG. I mean, multi-billion-dollar companies, right? AMN, Jackson Healthcare, and they have locumtenens.com and all these other Jackson staff. I mean, there's so many conglomerates, and it's just such big business in the U.S. That I thought that really what could separate us and from the pack is, hey, we're hyper focused, super specialized on just ENT, and specifically, I really was focusing just on providing call coverage to employed practices because I saw what we were going through was common all over, certainly the Midwest at the time, which is where our network was the strongest, but we were also involved in our national academy and saw this happening everywhere. You would have a group of 4 or 5 ENTs. It would get acquired by a hospital and become employed. And then one of the docs would retire. One of the docs would, doesn't like his contract renewal, so he leaves. And then suddenly you have a group of 5 to a group of 3. They're now Q3 call instead of Q5 call. And suddenly they're like, it's hard to get a weekend away and they're not getting compensated for their call. And they go to the hospital and they'd say, hey, can we get paid for this call or can we get more money? And they're like, no, fair market value. We can't pay you more. It's, stark anti-kickback laws.
God, I just went into hives.
Flashbacks.
Like, those discussions that we had back in my prior practice.
Yeah, it's super stressful. It's really discouraging. And so I kind of came up with this idea that, okay, well, I get that. So we do have a cap in the US on, especially when you're employed because of these federal regulations. The thing that was always missed though, in those discussions from an admin standpoint is, you can't pay me more money. That's fine. But I don't understand why you're considering my Q2 call or my Q3 call to be fair market value. Like, is it really as a hospital administrator, how many weekends are you able to get away? Right. I'm sure it's more than one.
100%.
Or 2. And then the whole time you have to be around geographically, which for someone who loves to travel is obviously very difficult. Thank God I didn't wakeboard then, because I wouldn't have even felt comfortable being out on a boat. Right. Because you just have to, you have to be able to get to the hospital within 20 minutes if you're covering airways or nosebleeds or all these things. Yeah. I really started pushing this idea of advocating for fair market value quality of life. If you're getting pushback with finances and what they're going to pay you, that's fine. But then say, hey, you know what? I think I should only be on call Q4. I think that's real. I'll take a weekend a month as an employed doc. More than that, I'm not getting paid for it. It's even if I was, the little bit that you're saying it's not worth it to me. So, I want to be on Q4. And so then the way to fix that and these docs would leave if they want to get that is to then provide some locums call coverage. So we really specialized in
paying more.
Paying a lot triple more. Or, double or triple, right? So it doesn't make financial sense, but this is when not many things do in medicine, in all of the players involved. And so, but that is something that then hospitals felt they could do. Obviously there was pushback, but if they feel like they're going to lose if it's a choice between losing your service line or keeping your service line, keeping your docs productive, and then, maybe losing a little money paying for call, ultimately the hospitals win in the end because they're keeping their service line. Their docs can be more productive when our locums docs are there covering consults. Employed doc doesn't have to cancel a full afternoon clinic or cancel a day cases because they're dealing with something in the ER. And then the docs that are getting call coverage are super happy, right? They feel like they're listened to by the hospital. They felt like they can continue on. And so I had a number of early clients who would be like, I'm leaving this job in 3 months, 6 months. Once they got call coverage, it completely changed things for them. So they were much more able to improve their quality of life and be productive, and are still there years later. So I saw that as a real niche, not only the specialty, but also the type of call we were going to be providing. I knew that we could cover it, right? So like you want to hire quality docs. It's a small field. I know everybody's a degree of separation away, so you have to bring a quality product. We were able to pay the docs more. The ENT locums rate has probably gone up 50% since we started this. And I actually really like to attribute that to us because it was very low to begin with. And when you do have options of, hey, you know what, come and work for us, we'll pay you 30, 40% more than what Comp Health is offering you. Then the other players realize they're 3 or 4 ENTs they were using before. They're not working with us anymore. What's going on? So we kind of elevated that, and they were able to charge a lower rate to the hospitals. So, and then if we couldn't get it, early on, it was the roughest. I mean, it was a lot harder to start and grow than I would have ever expected from my MBA workshop thing.
You were like, I know exactly how this is going to go.
There's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of stress with it, but you don't really know that at the time. You just know, I think this is a good idea. I think we can I see on paper how this would work. And with my experience, how there could be a market to grow for it, because once practice A hears that their hospital is getting practice B coverage, then practice A suddenly is like, well, why aren't we getting this? Right. So it kind of snowballed that way where, employed practices kind of began to expect, hey, Q4, Q5 call is probably reasonable. I shouldn't have to be expected to take more than that. And then we were the option there to help them do that. So
how are you able to do that? Is it just that your administrative structure is so much more efficient than these large conglomerates that have?
Part of it is the network, right? So we don't have a locums company is really heavily dependent upon recruiters, just in general. And so that's a lot of it. And so we don't have recruiters. And I'm hoping to stay away from that as we've grown and we've expanded other specialties. Really try to rely on making sure that we can provide the docs we say we can provide, and then have really been fortunate to grow because we provided such high quality, both care for hospitals and then high quality coverage from doctors, and provided good sites for the docs to work, that we have really grown organically through word of mouth. And so I think that's the main thing. And so we can really narrow the margin that we take to expand and give that to the docs and give the hospitals some savings while growing, because as far as investment, I've grown my admin staff, but I've really tried to stay away from growing specifically recruiters on our staff and don't have those.
So how did you get started with all this? So you have your idea, you have your MBA, you're like, I have done a SWOT analysis. I am like super positioned to overtake the world here. Did you have to have like a different business partners, or did you bring in the business or the finance guys or, people? For better or for worse, Allie and I have really kind of existed in our own army when it comes down to it. So, I've always tried to, I value my friends too much to try to go into business with them a lot of the time. Yeah.
And I value autonomy too much to try to take outside funding. So I've always tried to approached, and I think this is where the MBA has saved me, I say, but it, possibly missed out on some opportunities. But I've always tried to approach our business endeavors with not trying to grow too big too fast, not trying to think, oh, this is the best idea ever and I need to get some outside money, and really not trying to spend, because there's business to business services that, as you probably know from being on LinkedIn, will reach out all the time. I mean, it'd be very easy to drop 20, 30K a year between a marketing person or a month even on a marketing person and a lead list and, a CRM platform. And so I've always tried to approach it in a way that grows methodically with a lot of kind of almost like surgeon level precision with regards to when I bring in experts and who I bring in and how and why. And for example, like attorneys, right? So I have a solid attorney that I would rely upon to check my contracts, to make sure that we're doing everything from a compliance standpoint. But we really didn't bring in any outside investment or business partners. And even now, as you get bigger, you're kind of a target for that, for private equity backing, private equity assistance. And it's still something I'm really trying to avoid, at least in the foreseeable future, because I think I'm not really interested in giving up autonomy, because I think we do a really good job with the service we provide.
Well, and you get on a treadmill. Once you bring in VC, that's
right.
You get on a treadmill and then all of a sudden you have to grow 10x, 20x, 40x, and that's a lot.
I know other people who've tried to start in this space, and I think that, and they've gone under because it's just difficult to do, because you may have some friends who can work, but then trying to get the clients and grow that side of things can be difficult if you don't do it well. It's easy to get your overhead too high, where you're paying a bunch of employees to do this or that thing for you, or to bring in investors. I mean, it's just the whole time, this is kind of like, it started to be a side gig, right? It was something I was going to do and help out some friends I knew needed call. So I never really intended for it to be our like primary go-to thing that we were doing full time. Right. We pretty much are these days. Yeah. I mean, I think that I always approach to like, I've seen just so many friends and colleagues who've had business ventures that they've just poured so much money into and lost money on, right? Or they're still trying to, it's going to take off. Like whether it's an idea they started in academic practice and then they have some share in it and they're now trying to develop it on their own, or some idea that they had that they got a patent for. I mean, it's just, there's just so many people out there that'll sell you the pickaxes and ropes and make money off that while you're trying to find, the gold stash, the gold reservoir. Yeah. And that's, I think, where I never really wanted to fall into that. So when I was growing, I was really trying to do as much as I could on our own. And then when I hit a wall, I'm like, okay, well, I've exhausted these options. Maybe it's time to bring in some help or expertise. That's kind of how I approached it.
That's really fascinating. And I think that people do get overwhelmed. And so you think that you have to have too much stuff. You have to be completely as professional looking as, in your situation, like Comp Health or whatever else. I mean, even here, kind of in starting my wee little podcast here, that there are things that I can do a lot, or I'm doing all of the admin stuff on my own and this, that, and the other thing. But when it came to editing and producing and all of that stuff, I knew right away that there was just going to be such a high barrier for me to be able to do it that it just wasn't going to be worth it. And that's the one place where I actually spend the money on is just hiring somebody to do that, and everything else I can do. I know that I have my fixed cost every month with that. And then everything else I do, trying to keep it nice and tight right now. And, I think, for people out there that are going to want to start a business, keep that in mind, keep your fixed costs down.
Absolutely. And that's a really great point. And it's also to that point, knowing where you do have those pain points that, if editing is taking you a long time to do, then outsourcing that makes a lot of sense. And I think I think what you don't want to do is just outsource everything immediately, right? Like that's where people run into issues, because you burn through your cash so quickly doing that. And I was always really focused on wanting to meet like certain savings goals and investing goals. Never really wanted to kind of take that away, because I feel like that's like risky business, because ultimately, even if you think you have a good idea and you think it can grow, that's just theoretical until you actually start doing that.
Yeah. So what kind of ups and downs did you have, especially when you're starting out? How did you deal with that? And how did you continue to grow? How did you get through the points where you thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to have to shut it down? Or, I'm sure that those thoughts were creeping in, right?
Yeah. So fortunately, unlike I just found out one of my friends who started one in a different subspecialty, just had to close his down. Fortunately, we've never been in that situation. The kind of one time where I just really took a step back and was like, okay, does this make it was a barrier, right? It was like a thing that kind of came in that was just like, what do I need to do here? Like do I sell it at this point? Which I definitely didn't want to do. Right. And that came at a time actually just last year where, not to get too in the weeds, but in the staffing space, the locums companies, technically what we're doing, we're a middleman between the hospital and the doctor. There's another middleman between the hospital and the agencies called VMS platforms, and they're vendor management. And they're probably the biggest growing sector in the staffing space. And essentially a hospital, rather than dealing with my company and your company and someone else's company and Comp Health to provide their different locums, will go to this vendor management system and say, hey, I want you to take care of the locums company. I'm just going to tell you what jobs I need. And then this software / back office service will put the jobs up, and then you bid the jobs or post your candidates. Well, that comes with startup expenses. All then those costs are put on to the agency. And we've had really good relationships with all of our hospitals. And that's how we've maintained like such a high continuation of them using our services. Well, sometimes when you work in a bigger system, a VMS will come in and you don't really have a choice. Like you can't direct contract anymore. You have to go to that agency or that VMS. And so we had that come up last year with one of our main clients was switching to a VMS. We had hundreds and hundreds of doc days scheduled. And I was just like, that was a blow. I was like, this is going to, it's been like 2 days where I was just like, this is going to suck. It's going to cost us all this money. I'm not going to pay my docs less. I don't want to charge my hospitals more, but how am I paid this high fee? And so that was 2 days of feeling really sorry for myself. And then I was like, okay, well, what are the advantages? How can I leverage this situation? I tried to see if there was a way I could direct contract, and it's pretty much the hospitals would have been fine with it, but the system's like, no, right? Like this is how we're doing it. We have to systemicize or make it a systemic change. So what I was able to do then was actually leverage it to get access to jobs throughout the country at hundreds of other hospitals in 25 to 50 different specialties. So now I'm on the playing field with all of these hospitals. And before, if I had a radiologist reach out to me or an OBGYN or a general surgeon, I have to, say, well, there's nothing, we specialize just in ENT. I've been wanting to get into more surgery subspecialties. And now that we've been able to have access to this platform, it's been great because we've expanded states, we've expanded specialties. And so we've really been able to leverage the VMS platform and become really good partners with them too, because at first I was just like, oh, this is just another middleman, but I have soon come to realize the value it does provide to hospitals who are using them. And then quite frankly, agencies like ours who are providing like very specific with the docs we provide. And so when we bid a high quality doc at a reasonable price, we're rewarded for that value that we're bringing by being able to place them there. And so what I was afraid was going to be a very contentious, kind of stressful situation or relationship has actually turned out to be kind of a boon for our company and our docs that are working for us across the board, because we now essentially give access to these positions to the highest quality of our docs and they're making more than they otherwise would elsewhere.
Do you have any advice to anybody that might be wanting to start a company? I mean, we all spend our days thinking about how inefficient things are around us, right? Like if you were a doctor and you were in practice, you have something that you gripe about and something that you see as an inefficiency that you could change. So what advice would those doctors benefit from you?
Yeah. Well, I would say don't start a locums company.
That's right.
There's enough out there already.
Saturated market. Yeah.
Do not saturated market. It's too many barriers, like too low of a success rate, which is actually all true. But so I think we did get lucky. I mean, I think that the way we grew would not be what other people are seeking when they're talking about growing a business. I mean, we're talking about over 8 years, steady 10, 15, 20% growth year over year without investing significant. I mean, there's things you have to pay for, obviously, with malpractice policies and advancing the doc's money and stuff like that. I think we got very fortunate, a combination of really hard work and thinking through the market and a bunch of bootstrapping. But I think in general, when docs are looking at starting businesses, always thinking to themselves, like, look, I watched this Ken Burns documentary about the Yukon Gold Rush, and I kind of referenced it a little bit earlier, but that's kind of how I always try to analyze business plans or business ideas. Am I the one hunting for the gold deposit, or am I the one that is this business going to be selling the pickaxes and the ropes to others, right? So that's kind of how I approach it. And then I'm also very hesitant to invest large sums of capital unless everything else is taken care of. Like I put that low on the list, right? And especially when we were paying off medical school loans and trying to just get everything set, because you're starting at such a disadvantage when you're in your early 30s and you've got loans and no retirement, and to try and get that. So I would make sure all of that shit is like taken care of first, and then really try to realize, hey, you may be busy doing what you're doing, but you're also extremely well-trained and intelligent. You wouldn't be where you are as a physician without that being true. I mean, you just can't get through those tests. You can't get through this training and become a licensed physician without that being true. So have some significant kind of faith and belief in your ability to learn whatever you need to learn, educate yourself, and then really focus on doing it yourself as much as you can. I'm not saying to not have an attorney. I think attorneys are probably the most valuable, but interview attorney. If you don't have a good one or one that you feel like you can trust or know, like that's really important to kind of make sure you have that squared away, that you don't have someone who's just selling you the pickaxes and the rope, like that you have someone that's going to be a partner with you. I think both from an attorney standpoint and then a CPA standpoint, like those are things that you want to get in order, but not necessarily in that order, right? Like I think knowing what you can do it yourself until you can't. And then like your example with the editing, like if there is a pain point that seems to be taking a lot of your time, like clean that up, fix that, right? Another area that I see a lot of people losing money on are digital marketing campaigns or digital marketing services or ad services. Those are very easy to do yourself. Like most agencies will charge you $5,000 to $10,000 a month to run your website or run your Google ads or do your Facebook ads. There's so much markup on that, and the value they're adding most of the time, in my opinion, is so limited. But yet there's 100 companies that will reach out to you wanting to sell you these services, wanting to do this for you. That's a very quick way to eat up your capital quickly. If you think that that's necessary for what you're doing, then I think try to learn it yourself, because it's not that expensive. And Google and Facebook, they want that business. They're fine to have to train you through it. They have advisors that don't cost anything other than the cost of the ads to do. And then I think relying on your own network to find either those connections or to get advice and seek out mentorship. So if you have an attending or a fellow resident that you knew was pretty business savvy and you're thinking about getting into real estate investing, then seek those out. And maybe if they don't know it, then they probably have someone who they can connect you to. I think that that's something that I leaned on heavily when I was starting this. I would call like my wife's uncle's an anesthesiologist in Bozeman, Montana, and he knew an orthopedic doc who was in a similar business. And so I talked to that guy for like an hour, and he was kind enough to do that. So I think there's enough of us out there that are willing to do the stuff to help each other out on kind of like a pro bono basis to give ideas and feedback. That's another thing that I would rely on before you just start paying money, and especially ongoing fixed expenses for to start something.
I mean, that's kind of been the one thing that I have found is that if you find something that you're interested in, there is somebody else who is interested in it, and they are more than happy to talk to you most of the time. I mean, small niche things like doctors and podcasting and whatever else, like everybody will be more than happy to talk to you about it and to give you suggestions. And that has been very helpful to me. But any kind of business, anything that people are passionate about it, and they're really happy to talk to you.
Yeah, totally. And then I think the other thing is, I have so many friends who like have these great ideas, right? And even if they're getting patents, it's just so hard to get it from that point of an idea. And even if you have it gotten it patented, to get it sold, to get it grown, to get it in the hands. I mean, just be very cautious with your resources, because you don't want to be working until you're 70 or 75 or 80. I mean, realize that the time value of money, before you start investing hundreds of thousands of dollars into something that you think is an idea that can't lose, or getting your friends or your parents to invest in that, especially or closer to retirement. I've just seen it a number of times where it's happened with other people, and they either don't, worst case, they lose all the money, but usually they just kind of end up exiting. Maybe they get out what they put in, maybe a little bit less, but if that money and time would have been invested, or even just the money, right? If the money would have been invested elsewhere, they'd just be so much better off. They're really seeking that huge payout.
Jeff Bezos's parents that invested $25,000 in Amazon, and now they're worth whatever. There are 500 stories of somebody who's really, really angry at their children for blowing money. And social media is so, not to get on a high horse here, but like social media is so toxic for this, right? Like you see all the time on Instagram, whether it's Locums docs that are saying, I'm making $8,000 a day, right? Like, or even just people making tons of money on short-term real estate. I mean, it's so toxic because you're constantly seeing this and you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? I've got maybe this is my idea. This is what I need to be doing. And so much of that stuff is not even true. So much of it is overinflated, right? Like I think it's caused this kind of toxic situation where we feel like we're missing out. I think FOMO is a big thing. And so I think then you want to invest in something or start something or do something. It's not necessarily like, I think you have to take all of that stuff with a grain of salt. I don't think that as many people are as successful as they're acting like they are to generate followers and content. And that's number one. And then number two, like
ultimately, if you find a job, you find a way to practice in your specialty that you enjoy, that you can protect that license and not get burnt out. If you can keep doing medicine, I mean, find a way to make it happy, make you happy doing it, have autonomy, move to a different country even. I mean, whatever you need to do, if you can protect that, then I think you're going to be very well off in the long run. But I think sometimes when you get burnt out and you're just looking for an option and you're thinking, oh, if I start this business, I want to practice medicine anymore. That's dangerous, because that's a very quick way, I think, to make not the wisest decisions with your resources.
Yeah. One of my earlier guests had said that you need to run towards something than away from something. And I think that's really important. And if you're running towards a little bit of a balance in life, just like you said, I don't want to do Q2 call anymore. And so a lot of people will run away from that, but run towards Q5 call, try and figure out how to make that a little bit better. And, I think referencing Gopi, our mutual friend Gopi that was on your podcast, which I recommend everybody check out. Let's Locums.
Gopi's amazing. Yeah.
But she was living in Paris for 2 years. She and her family moved to Paris, and that she would fly in and locum for a week every 4 to 6 weeks or something like that.
Yeah. She worked with us doing that. And she could have easily just said, screw it, I'm going to take a year or two off and then figure it out later. But I mean, I think she made the right call completely, because she made a lot of money while she was doing that. She kept her skill set up. And I think she still had a really good quality of life while she was there. Sought something she wasn't, a different way of practicing, rather than just saying, screw it, I'm done. I was really impressed by that.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting thing about locums is it gives you an opportunity to try something out, right? And as I was telling you before, that just that saved us here. When we first moved here, I was locuming, and I mean, it gave me a job. It gave my family a chance to get established here in Victoria. And it's even now I have a full-time job, but I'm covering a maternity leave as kind of a part-time job. And I'm working as a hospitalist now as a part-time job. And that's just something that it gives me a little something that's just different and helps me to just change up the pace a little bit. And I think that's fantastic. And it does give you a little bit of a chance to try something else out and to give yourself some flexibility. If you're feeling trapped, it gives you a lot of flexibility.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I love about this business is I've had a lot of docs, and I talk to docs all the time in various situations. And it really does give them a way to reset their mindset, to reset how they're practicing. And oftentimes it just helps out a ton, whether it's Gopi's situation where she was able to live abroad. We have a number of docs who are dealing with non-competes and they can't move. And so to be able to give them a way to keep practicing, and in some cases make more than they were making working full time by working a week or two a month, and then be present with their family until their non-compete runs out, or our military docs who are able to give level 1 trauma sites too, so they can stay ready from a trauma standpoint, even when we're not, fortunately not in an active war zone right now that they're all being deployed to. And it is something that I enjoy, that side of things, to really help docs who have been able to make their way. And we have some docs who were traditionally employed and now they just work full time, even like early to mid career. Not full time, but making full time money, doing 1 to 2 weeks a month with a schedule they want that they can adjust as needed. I think it's been a great way to do that. And all at the same time, we're now providing care not only to assistance to employed docs, giving them a break, but a lot of what we do now, probably about half of our business, is service lines. So we set up specialty service lines at different hospitals and rural communities and staff those with docs that are rotating through. And so people that otherwise wouldn't have access to surgery care are getting it, right? I mean, driving 3 hours to the closest hospital system is not tenable for a lot of patients that we see at those sites. So it's been good. I mean, and I think that allows us to keep, it's one of the reasons why I'm not interested in selling it at this point, is it's like, okay, well, I enjoy doing this. I feel like we're adding value. I feel like we're helping our docs out. I feel like we're helping our clients out. I think we're helping patients out in a way that
helping patients
goes beyond what Ali and I could do just seeing patients full time. So
that's amazing. Just really quickly, I know that I've kept you here forever now already, but what do you guys do outside of clinical medicine and doing all of this stuff? So we talked about wakeboarding and going out on the boat and stuff like that. So
we're together all the time. So we practice a lot together, right? So rarely I'll drive if there's a hospital needs covered, and I might go down there for a day or two. But for the most part, we practice together. We'll be in clinic together, which we absolutely love. We'll work on this business together. mean, we have kids. We love our kids. We love spending time with them and going to all of their stuff. And our big kind of passion / problem is travel. I mean, international travel. The further and more exotic, the better. The shorter, the better, I guess. Not all the time. I mean, we've done quick, crazy trips we just got back from the Taj Mahal. We were there for about 3-4 days for Ali's birthday. She really wanted to see that. So we flew out there and flew back. We've taken longer extended times. One time I was in a Gopi-esque situation. I was like, you know what? I think let's just move to Europe, right? This is like a few years ago. And so we took the kids and we're like, realized very quickly that was probably need to be a little bit better planned out because we were, my daughter we went to our fruit market and she had like this pineapple and we were going to eat it. She's like, don't cut spiny. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, my 6-year-old is making friends with fruit because she missed her friends back home. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah. So we didn't. We were just there for a few months, and then returned. But like we love to travel with them and it's frequently. So we'll try to every 3 or 4 months take an international trip with them. We really love outdoors. We've been doing a lot on the lake the past couple of years and getting into swim, and we like to scuba and ski and ski in the winter and trying to learn how to water ski, but learning wakeboarding and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just whatever we can do to be outside and be together, wherever in the world that may be, is kind of what we spend our time doing.
That's absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's again, your kids are at the age where our kids were when we first started going out on the boat, and we joined a boat club, and
nice.
So that was really a lot of fun. And so it was kind of like it wasn't the hassles of boat ownership. So it was really nice, but we would go out and, the kids learned how to wakeboard, and we would go out on the tubes, and, we have all these great videos of us out on the water and having a lot of fun. So
do you guys ever wake surf?
Yes. So we got into that.
I really want to wake surf. I've never been, our boat doesn't do enough of a wake to wake surf.
Yeah. So
but it looks awesome.
It was pretty fun. Again, I'm not the world's greatest boarder. And so we started trying to do that the last summer that we lived in Nashville. And so it was a lot of fun. I grew up kind of water skiing on slalom. And so everything was a lot faster than being on a wakeboard and wake surfing. But
what are you going, like 30, 35 miles an hour on the slalom skis, right?
Yeah. So I think that good people go faster, but it was a lot of fun. So I tried wakeboarding. Again, not great at it. I always joked that I was like that TV show, The Greatest American Hero, I think it was, where it was a superhero that could like fly and he could take off, but he didn't know how to land. Like he could never land like in a superhero pose or whatever. He would just like crash into stuff. And so my kids would love it when I would try and just jump as high as I could possibly jump on a wakeboard. And every time it was just like, I think I landed it twice. And so there were a few times where it really hurt my ribs. And so I calmed that down quite a bit. Tubing is also a lot of fun with our kids behind the boat.
Yeah, I love that.
Andrea mostly drives the boat that she used to drive for summer camps and stuff like that. So she's much better than I am at pulling skiers and whatever else, but she's brutal on the tube. We have some great videos of our little battles where I would be on the tube in the back by myself. She wouldn't let the kids come on during those, where it was like basically it was equivalent to like domestic assault what she was doing to me, but it was on a tube, and it was great videos. So that was some of the most fun for us. Our kids go to summer camps during the summer, and so they go off to Ontario and go to summer camp now. But man, we had so much fun just going on trips and things like that. I really encourage people to take that time, because now my oldest has been gone for a year, and my second child he's moving off in about 5-6 weeks.
No,
and
wow.
He graduates high school, and then the next morning he goes off to camp, and that's it.
Wow. I think we took a little bit of heat when we were traveling with our kids so young. And I think, it's like, oh, they're not going to remember it or whatever. And I don't know, like, I feel like they do remember more than I would have thought they would have. And then they also are just like such good travelers now, right? So they're just used to it. They know how the whole thing works. And so you don't have to deal with meltdowns very much, or I mean, it's just kind of they get you understand the jet lag and everything. So I
we
think
learned that
gelato
cures everything.
Yeah,
so when you're in Italy, gelato, like the kids have about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and then it's like, oh, more gelato, and then that's pretty much cures everything. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, anything else?
I don't think so. Congrats on what you're doing. I love the podcast, and I appreciate you having me on as a guest, and looking forward to chatting again in the future.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate this. You guys are awesome. And it sounds like you guys have a lot of fun just like us. So this year, if you decide that you want to come out to British Columbia and go ski,
oh, geez, I'd love to.
Know.
Oh, well, we do this stuff like that all the time, randomly. So don't extend the invitation unless it's legit.
Yeah, no, come on. Come on.
Well, I guess the only other thing I would say, if you do have any listeners who are interested in locum tenens or even just finding out about it, I mean, I'm always happy to talk to them about what the options would be. We are now in just about every state in the U.S. Unfortunately, I don't have any international locums yet, but every state in the U.S. In every specialty, we have usually something available. And a lot of our docs that work for us are first-time locums docs. It's just becoming a really popular option. So I'm always happy to have myself or Allie chat with those docs. We usually like to talk to them individually, personally, just so we can get a sense for what questions they have and make sure it'd be a good fit for them. It's not a fit for everybody. A lot of people it is, and some people it's exactly what they've been missing in their career. So we're always happy to chat with them. We can be reached at specialtylocums.com is our main website. They're ENTs. We ENT is still our first love. So we have entlocums.com as well. That's a significant portion of our business, but we are now in many states and many different specialties at Specialty Locums.
Fantastic. And if you want to see all of Mark's travels and his wakeboarding escapades, where can they find you on social media?
Allie really limits what I put up on there. So she put it up, like sometimes I'll post it and she'll hey, take that down. Yeah. So there's a few that are peppered throughout there. Sometimes I think my Sean Murray wakeboard video is still hiding there on Instagram, but Instagram is Specialty Locums, at Specialty Locums. I think we also are on Facebook. And then our podcast, Let's Locums, is on all platforms, but it's not as good as this one. So put it below. Right. Put it below on the listen list. We've had some good guests. It's been fun doing it. I need to get your team though, your editing team. I need to hook up with you offline because
they're amazing.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right. Well, Dr. Mark Royer, check him out, specialtylocums.com, entlocums.com, and Let's Locums podcast.
Thanks so much.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Thanks. Hey, thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Interesting MD podcast. Please check out my content on YouTube at Interesting MD and follow me on TikTok, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at The Interesting MD and on X at Interesting MD. If you have comments or questions and want to get in touch with me or any of my guests, please DM me on socials or email me at rob@interestingmd.com. If you have any ideas for a show and you want to share your hobbies with me or don't know where to get started on your own project, you can email ideas@interestingmd.com. Please like and subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel to get the latest content. Much appreciation to Falter Media for editing, producing, and posting all Interesting MD content. Check them out because if they can do this for me, imagine what they can do for you. See you next week.